Good afternoon folks, welcome to Benidorm. My name is Toad and this is the launch of Honda's new CB1000 Hornet. So this is a bike we first saw at EICMA. It was quite a long time ago and we were all really excited about it because it kind of offered a slightly cheaper, more attractive or more universally appreciated version of its CB1000R, which was kind of a neo-retro and a little bit at the more premium end of the naked bike segment. But then it didn't arrive, it took a long time to get here, but 2025 is the year that you will be able to walk into your Honda dealership and pick one up. And we've been out here today riding around on the thing all day, getting a feel for it. We've done about 170 kilometers on the bikes. We've only been riding the SP. There was an opportunity to ride the stock CB1000 Hornet at the lunch stop, but after speaking to one of the other journalists who told me what the differences were dynamically, I kind of just thought, well, I'll just stick to this one and we'll get a stock bike on for review when I get back to the UK. As ever, I'm going to tell you about the bike, going to tell you a little bit about the two models, and then I'm going to tell you how it handled out here on the roads. So starting at the top, this bike is £9,999. The stock bike is £8,999. You can pick them up on a PCP deal for pocket money. So the stocker will be 101 quid. This one comes out about 112 quid. That's on Honda's own sort of PCP example, for want of a better phrase. We've got 155-ish bhp from this one, and you've got about 3 bhp less on the stocker, and you've got 114 newton meters of torque. So it's all about the mid-range really, this bike. The engine is from the 2017 Honda Fireblade. It's been totally retuned and reworked, and that's not just to slot it into a new naked bike coming from that sports bike, but also to get it through Euro 5 Plus, because the previous engine wasn't even Euro 5 compatible, so they've had to kind of upgrade it over 2 generations to get it through the latest Euro 5 Plus regulations. So there are some internal changes to the engine as well. So we've got cast pistons, not forged ones. We've got new valve timing and new lift. We've got new gearbox ratios, and we've got a new downdraft inlet. And the reason that they could do this was because of the way that the frame has been designed. They couldn't incorporate that on the CB1000R, but because this has got a twin spar design to the frame, they could incorporate downdraft inlets on this one. We've got 44mm throttle bodies, we've got an assisted slipper clutch, and that frame that you can see down there is all new. It's not a reworking of a Fireblade frame or a tweak on the CB1000R frame. It is a totally bespoke frame, all one piece, no detachable subframe. Suspension, we have got Showa big piston separate function forks on this one, which is fully adjustable for preload, compression and rebound damping. On the SP, you also get the Öhlins TTX shock absorber, which is obviously fully adjustable as well. The other trick bit that the SP gets, or trick bits that the SP gets, you get Brembo Stylema stoppers, and it is just the calipers, so the master cylinder is still the same item that you get on the stock bike. And the other thing you get is a quick shifter mounted down this side of the bike, which is an option on the stock bike but comes on this bike automatically. I say we've been riding SPs, they haven't been totally standard, they've got some accessories on them. The one I was riding today had an Alcantara seat, had a little billet top clamp cover up here, and a few other little sort of aesthetic trick bits and all sorts of other stuff. The only other thing that the SP gets over the stocker, I believe, is you have a valve in the exhaust system. So you've got a valve that opens up between 5 and 6,000 RPM, depending on how hard you are accelerating. From talking to some of the guys that rode the stock bike at lunchtime, it's not a huge amount of difference in terms of the pickup of the throttle or the acceleration. I'm going to wait until I get back to the UK to test it fully and properly. So, like I said, it's been a pretty long day today. The route that we have done up here in Benidorm has been absolutely stunning. The roads have been beautiful, there's camber in all the right places, and the surface has been supremely grippy, and it's been dry totally all day, which has been an absolute blessing. I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to compare it a little bit to the CB1000R in this review, and that's because it is kind of the bike. I know they're both available in the Honda range at the minute, but the CB1000R is going to get discontinued eventually. Honda have already said that, and this is going to be the bike that takes over from it, so it makes sense to sort of talk about it in that respect and benchmark it against its competitors. It feels very different to ride than the CB1000R. The CB1000R is a great road bike, it handles beautifully, but this is a totally different kettle of fish. And the biggest thing is the agility. It is supremely agile, very, very fast steering, very light feeling. You've got a weight bias which is over the front end of the bike. You sit up over the handlebars quite a bit, you're not sat back in the seat, so it's quite a focused riding position. You've got your head over the clocks almost, and with that comes a feeling that this thing just sort of almost, at the start of the day, I had to kind of recalibrate the way that I was riding, because it sort of just, you turn the bars and you lean it into a corner, it just falls into the corner. You have to recalibrate that, and once you get your head around it, it is just so fast steering. And that's been one of the best things that we've been doing today, is because the roads have been so twisty and so nice. We've just been enjoying the speed at which this thing changes direction. It's very, very good. The front end on it is a real standout point, and it's weird that I'm not saying it's the rear end, because that's the end that's got the Öhlins rear shock absorber, but the front end feels super, super planted. So on corner entry, when you're coming into the corner and you're braking, it's just giving you all the support through the show big piston forks. And it just feels like you can really ask any sort of question on it, and it's running on Bridgestone S22 tyres, so they're absolutely fantastic for riding in this sort of scenario. But it will basically just do whatever you want. If you're running into a corner a little bit too hot, you just dab a bit of the back brake, lean a little bit further, and the bike has got no issues whatsoever. It never, ever really seems to get flustered or to complain in any way, shape or form. I'm going to talk very quickly about the braking system, because this is really the thing about this bike. Why you pay an extra grand over the stocker is you get in the Brembos, the quick shifter, and the Öhlins rear shock absorber, which, when I say it like that, actually sounds like bloody good value. The front brakes are exactly what you want, really. They're super, super strong. You only need 1 or 2 fingers on the lever all day. I don't think I've put 4 fingers over the lever, and they just feel great. The really nice progressive lever. It's only a Nissin radially mounted master cylinder, not a Brembo item, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you're going to start taking the thing on track, you might want to upgrade that a little bit, but for road riding, that is going to do you absolutely fine. Connected to the braking system, we have got a 2-channel ABS system, and I thought any bike in this sort of capacity and this sort of price point would have an IMU and cornering ABS, but that's not the case. That's one of the things that has kept the price of this bike so low, under £10,000 at the point of launch, is the fact that it doesn't have that IMU. With that said, the 2-channel ABS system is very good. It's not overly intrusive, and it's not one of those 2-channel ABS systems that just loses all of the braking pressure when the ABS cuts in. It still keeps a little bit of pressure in there. It seems to be very well tuned and very well set up, so that is all good. I think that it needs an IMU. I think there are a lot of people out there who will say it needs an IMU. Did it detract from the riding experience today that it didn't have cornering ABS? No, not in any way, shape or form. The engine feels so phenomenally fast. This is a detuned version of the Fireblade engine. So the old Fireblade, the 2017, had upwards of 180 horsepower, let's say, at the back wheel. This has got a claimed 150, sort of 5-ish. This doesn't feel slow at all in any way, shape or form. Please don't think of this bike and the engine that's in this bike as a kind of a really softened, dulled down Fireblade engine, because it's not. Because what they've done with the way that they've retuned the mid-range and the way that they've sort of taken from the peak top end power and then dumped that into the mid-range of the bike, and then changing all the ratios and shortening the gearing, has made it feel phenomenally fast in terms of the acceleration of the thing. It is just so quick out of a corner, especially slower corners. You pick up the throttle, and as soon as that engine starts to spin itself up and get into that mid-range where it can just pull cleanly all the way to the top, it just goes like an absolute bat out of hell, which is brilliant. Really helping us today as we were riding it was the quick shifter, which is standard on this one and an option on the stock CB1000. It's a really, really good system. It's like every other Honda quick shifter on any of their premium bikes. It just works perfectly whether you're going 30 miles an hour or 130 miles an hour. It changes smoothly at pretty much any speed, up and down the box, and it's absolutely brilliant. And of course you can switch it off if you are that way inclined. Going to talk a little bit about what the Öhlins is doing at the rear end, because it's kind of, it's just tucked up in there and you don't really notice it. From talking to some of the other guys that rode one of the stockers at the launch, the main thing that they were talking about that was noticeable between this bike and the stock bike was the front brakes. So it'll be interesting to see how the shock absorber on the stocker performs. But the rear end on this is obviously very, very good. It really helps to cushion any kind of squat as you're coming out of faster corners. And although the roads when we were up in the mountains were absolutely beautiful and fast and flowing, the rear shock absorber came into its own when we went into villages and we were crossing over speed bumps and the odd pothole or manhole cover or bump or lump. And it just soaked it up with that kind of plush compliancy that you only get from a shock absorber from a company like Öhlins. So that's all good and very well worth the money, might I add. The only other handling trait that I did notice, it does have a slight tendency every now and again, as you're coming out of a fast corner, if you ask for a throttle a bit too aggressively, it would have a tendency just to shake its head a little bit. There's no stability issues whatsoever when you're cruising at motorway speeds or if you're just flowing on a really, really fast stretch of road. But sometimes if you're coming out of a medium speed sort of sweeping corner and you ask for a lot of throttle, it sometimes would just start to shake its head just a little bit, but it was very rare that it was really doing that. It could be, you know, a set of stickier tyres might solve that. I don't know. I've gone through kind of all the good points in the handling and the stuff that I like. So are there any bad points? Okay, so we were riding the bike with the billet foot pegs, which had no damping in the foot pegs, and the pegs do vibe quite a bit. So as you're coming through the rev range, the pegs would vibrate and then they'd stop, and then as you get to the next sort of resonant frequency RPM in the rev range, they would start vibrating again. Apparently it's not a problem with the bikes with the rubber damped pegs. So it's, you know, I'm just letting you know that if you go for the billet foot pegs, there is a little bit of vibe that comes through there. There isn't really any vibration through the seat, through the tank, or through the bars. That's all very nicely damped. The throttle connection was the biggest bugbear that I've got. It can feel a bit choppy when you're coming on and off the throttle, especially if you're sort of in that point in a corner where you're trailing the throttle almost between fully closed and just a little bit open. It would feel a little bit choppy there. At the first coffee stop, I went into the TFT dash, which is very clear and easy to read, and it hasn't got that whole massive joystick that you've got on some of the other larger capacity Hondas. And I actually took out some of the engine braking. In fact, I took out all of the engine braking that I could. And I was running on a bit more in corners, which took a little bit of time to get my head round. But in terms of that throttle connection, it was much less choppy because there wasn't that immediate engine braking as soon as the ride-by-wire throttle had picked up that the throttles were closed. So I kind of worked my way around that. The only other thing that I noticed was every now and again, if my foot went just too close to the lever and just touched it, even if it wasn't pushing the lever in a downward motion or an upward motion, if my toe just caught the end of the lever, the quick shifter would cut the power to the engine and the bike could sort of hesitate if you're under acceleration at that point. Really, that's about it. There were some other sort of little things that you get with the traction control system. If you were coming out of a village and you hit a bump and you're on the throttle, the traction control would cut the power, and then it seemed to not allow you to get back up to speed again for a little bit longer than I would have liked anyway. But I mean, you're going to either work around that or just turn the traction control off altogether, because I think I was in the lowest mode on the traction control at that point. So that's what we've been doing. That's kind of all the bullet points that I've noted down for the Hornet SP. Basically, I think at £9,999 or £112 a month for this bike, even the SP, with the Brembos and the Öhlins and the quick shifter and a Fireblade derived engine, I think it's the bargain of the century. I mean, if you compare this to the other bikes in that sort of around the 1000cc class, Z900, MT09 for instance, it seems like really good value for money. But then if you think about it and you look at the specs on the spec sheet, especially things like the power and the torque and the chassis hardware, you can compare it to things like the Yamaha MT10, the stock model. And then you start thinking, actually, this is really, really good value for money. That's really it. This is a Honda that has been built like a Honda with all the Honda reliability, But I'm pretty sure that this is Suzuki pricing that they've used on this bike, because it just seems like an absolute steal. And it even looks great as well. I mean, this isn't a criticism of the bike, because I think it looks absolutely fantastic. The biggest compliment that I can give it is that it doesn't really look like a Honda. Honda 1000cc nakeds of the last 10, 15 years have sort of been a little bit dour, maybe a little bit restrained. This doesn't look like that. It's got elements of the Ducati Streetfighter in the front end, maybe a little bit of the MT10 as well. There's a bit of angularity in there thrown in, but it still just looks brilliant. And it's still got that lovely teardrop shape that the Hornet has always had as well, just to keep the purists happy. Another thing that I've been sort of running around in my head all day is that Honda have made bikes that you can have fun on. That's what they've always done. Riding bikes is all about having fun. But for a long time now, Honda's bikes have felt like they're being serious. This is the first Honda that I have ridden in quite a long time that feels like it wants to have fun. It's a fun bike to ride, and it feels playful in the way that it will wheelie. Even when the traction controls, it loves to wheelie. It will slide into corners if you know, go down 2 gears and dump the clutch. It will even back into corners on the brake with the ABS on. It is a bike that wants to have fun, and it's kind of got that vibe of the MT10 in that is another bike. It's a super naked that you can go out and have fun on. Yes, it hasn't got 210 bhp that you can't use on the road anyway. It's got 150, which you can use most of it on the road. And then if you want to go and do a track day, it's got the suspension hardware, the braking hardware, and just enough electronics for you to be able to do that. So Honda are only bringing 1,000 of these into the UK. So if you want one, I would think that you need to get down to your Honda dealer very, very quickly and have a chat to them, because I have a feeling at 9,999 quid, these things are going to sell out pretty quick, and that pricing probably won't stay that way for very long. And if you like that video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of Visordown's latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to visordown.com. Cheers, folks.